my first deal was on the MLS. It was just a dilapidated property that, it was condemned actually.
Okay.
It needed a lot of work. And I used a loan product called the 203K loan, which allows for you to take the rehab price and factor it into the mortgage. So you're actually amortizing it out over 30 years. And the only reason I knew to do that was because my agent suggested it to me. So I think when you're first starting out, really surrounding yourself with people that are knowledgeable, immersing yourself in meetings and the books and making sure that you're communicating with other people that are doing it is going to give you so many more tools in your tool belt to know what you can do.
You're listening to the Just Start Real Estate Podcast. If you're serious about your real estate investing business and need real answers, you are in the right place. And now, your host, Mike Simmons.
Hey guys, thank you for joining me here on Just Start Real Estate. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you tuning in. If you've never been here before, if this is the first time you're listening to the show, welcome. If you've been here before, if you're a returning listener, loyal listener, thank you. I appreciate it. You rock. You're the best. You're the reason I do it. So thank you for showing up either way, whether you're new or not. I have a great one for you today, guys. I am talking really good ground level real estate here with someone who's doing fantastic stuff in her market and really brings the goods when it comes to being transparent and just giving you all the tools that she's using. And she's really doing some good stuff. She's a smart lady, former attorney, and turned completely full-time real estate investor, and she's still in the business. I mean, she's doing it all, right? We talk a lot of times to investors who have built a team and they're out of the day-to-day, which is totally cool and inspirational, and that's kind of stuff I love bringing to you. But I like bringing people to you also who are still in the business, still doing things. I mean, this person's building their team, but it's still relatively small, and they're got hands-on on a lot of this stuff. So I'm excited. And then at the end, we kind of start like showing our scars and exchanging horror stories of things that have happened to us and some of our flips and some of our rentals and things like that. So it's kind of fun to listen to the end and you get some of these stories of things where they didn't go really well, didn't go as planned, right? So things don't always go as planned. But this is a very fun guest, and I'm excited to have Stephanie Cabral on the show. She's a buy and hold real estate investor and, like I said, former attorney from Connecticut. Stephanie has built a portfolio over $2.25 million in value and began investing while working at a law firm as the sole member of the probate department and also working as one of the top commercial real estate firms in the world. Stephanie now owns and operates 15 units plus multiple active flips and is responsible for all aspects of the business, like I talked about, including marketing, acquisitions, construction management, operations, and property management. She specializes in the BRRRR strategy and was able to scale her business using detailed network systems, standard operating procedures, automations, and virtual assistants. And we'll talk about what BRRRR stands for, but it's how she's built her empire and how she continues to build it. And it was just a lot of fun talking to Stephanie. She knows a lot. She's a very smart lady, like I said, and everything she shares in this episode is very, very, very actionable and relatable. So I'm excited to bring it to you. So without any further delay, I bring you Stephanie Cabral. All right, Stephanie, thank you for being on the show. I appreciate you doing this.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for having me, Mike. I'm excited.
No problem. It's fun to dive into some real hardcore real estate stuff. On this show, we do cover, it's all real estate really, but every once in a while I have someone on who's a little bit more mindset and like someone who speaks on motivational stuff, which is awesome. I think there's a place for that for sure. And I've done a few of those interviews in a row now. So for me, this is getting back to actual like talking about hardcore real estate, which I love. So I'm excited to do that. Let's, so that people have a little more context, let's dial back a little bit and talk about how you got started and kind of work your way forward to how you even got involved in real estate, assuming that you weren't in real estate from the moment you graduated high school, which maybe, but
no.
Let's talk about what your life was like before real estate and how you got involved.
Yeah, sure. So I'm actually a lawyer by trade. I went to college not knowing what I was going to do. My mom was a lawyer and pushed really hard for me to also follow in her footsteps. So when I graduated college and, without a clue, I did exactly that. I jumped into law school and I thrived in law school, but after I graduated, I realized pretty quickly that while I loved law school, I didn't love the practice of law. And so I knew that I didn't want to stay a lawyer. Being a lawyer was kind of a means to an end. I got a ton of experience, and I'm certainly glad to have the degree and all of that as a background. But practicing was really sucking the life out of me. So, now that I've left the firm, I say I'm a recovering lawyer, a lawyer in recovery. And I'm not sure how long I'm going to need to recover. It was tough.
That's interesting, but you thrived in law school. You liked being in law school, so you like law. What was it? Was it just like the theory that was interesting for you, or why did you not like practicing?
I didn't like practicing because maybe like the demand of the clients, the interfacing, and I loved my clients, but the fact that so much of the work is adversarial, and I do believe that your personality is a muscle, just like, anything else, any other muscle. The part of you that is flexed the most will get stronger. And so I didn't want to become more adversarial. And also it was just, being in the office wasn't for me. Like when you're in law school, you're not actually in the office a lot. You're moving around, you're interacting with your other fellow students. And I just felt that being in an office environment was not the life that I wanted to live.
Gotcha.
And so I ended up taking a job that had incredible flexibility, knowing that I wasn't going to stay there. I didn't want to build a career in law. And so the reason for this long backstory is because I was paid comparably. Because I had incredible flexibility, I was not paid the way that an entry-level associate would be paid.
Okay.
So I wanted to buy a house, but I was really struggling financially at this point. And so what was one of my greatest frustrations at the time ended up being the greatest gift, because I couldn't buy a single family house that I was proud of. So instead, I bought a duplex, and I used my tenant's income to qualify for a house that was basically twice as much as I would have qualified for on my own. And I didn't even know that what I was doing was investing, honestly. I just thought I was living cheaply and being resourceful.
Yeah.
Being resourceful is certainly one of my superpowers, and, figuring out how to do things. So when I started living in this duplex and my tenant was covering 95% of the mortgage, and I was putting in a couple $100 a month, that's when I was, really fell in love with the concept of house hacking, right? And having other people pay your mortgage. Yep. But then I, started to do better, was ready to buy a single family home, and then did the math and realized I could actually stay where I am and just put a tenant in that single family home. And then all of a sudden, the power of real estate as an investment, then my income increased because I was getting money from this rental. So all of a sudden, the concept and the power of investing really opened up. And that was maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And so I started from the first purchase to the second purchase was about 4 years. And then I didn't really wait after that. I started buying about 2 or 3 a year after that, once I understood what real estate investing was.
Okay. So how long did you wait to quit your job once the light bulb went off about what real estate was and how you could do it?
Way too long. So I started, I bought the duplex in 2012, and I just left the firm in December. So it's 2020 now. So, 7 years.
Wow. Okay.
7 years.
So you are literally recovering right now still. You've not been gone that long.
No, 6 months. Yeah. And so I jumped into, I've got a handful of rentals. I've got 15 rentals. And then I do a few flips a year, and then I'm also an agent. So I've been working with Colliers International. I worked with them for 6 years doing commercial work. And that was actually while I was an agent. While I was a lawyer. I was also working as an agent. And then I just switched over also in December when I left my job. I switched to EXP. And now I do residential properties for buyers and sellers.
Gotcha.
So I've got multiple streams of income, but they're all real estate related.
Awesome. So let me ask you then. So you said, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you said at the firm you weren't getting paid like other associates because you had that flexibility and stuff, and that you were kind of house hacking. So I know I've done this podcast long enough and I've talked to enough newer investors. They hear something like you say, I've got 15 rentals. The first thing they want to know, 2 questions. Number 1, where'd you get the money to buy 15 rentals? Number 2, how did you find them? Where did they come from?
Yeah.
So those are the 2 big questions. How does one go about financing 15 rentals?
So the way that you eat an elephant is one bite at a time, right? Mm-hmm. So start with the first one. How do you get your first property? And mine I did honestly in it was resourceful, but a very typical transaction. The property was on the MLS. And owner occupants that are going to house hack have a competitive advantage over any real estate investor because their financing terms are better. Yeah. And because they might be willing to take a lesser return because they're getting benefits, unquantifiable benefits living in it, right? And then when they move out, they'll, really see the rewards of it.
Yeah.
But my first deal was on the MLS. It was just a dilapidated property that, it was condemned actually.
Okay.
It needed a lot of work. And I used a loan product called the 203K loan, which allows for you to take the rehab price and factor it into the mortgage. So you're actually amortizing it out over 30 years. And the only reason I knew to do that was because my agent suggested it to me. So I think when you're first starting out, really surrounding yourself with people that are knowledgeable, immersing yourself in meetings and the books and making sure that you're communicating with other people that are doing it is going to give you so many more tools in your tool belt to know what you can do. But, what I did, I started planning for buying that property maybe a year and a half in advance. And like I said, I was making very little money. I had gone to a Millionaire Mind seminar. And so one of the things, I've gone a few times, I take a different thing away from each time I go. But the very first thing I took from the very first time was the tip to pay yourself first. Set aside a little bit of money, a designated amount of money, every single paycheck or income that you get.
Yep.
And so for me, I think they recommend like 10%. I think I was at like 3.5 or 4% because that's really, what I could stomach.
Yeah.
And it took a year and a half, but I ended up with a little nest egg of money that I was able to use. And when you're an owner occupant, you can put 3.5% or 5% down. So you can really get away with a much lower down payment.
Right.
So I think there are tools that are available to owner occupants that put them in an advantage. Also, like if you buy a property that's a HUD property, they have first look periods where owner occupants get to place bids that investors aren't even allowed in the time period. And so if you hit the reserve, HUD accepts your offer.
Yep.
And they're not looking even at investors. So I think that's a really valuable tool too.
Yeah, I really hated that as an investor because I was on the other side of that going, I want this house. Why do I not get it? And you're right, because they prioritize. Yeah, exactly. They prioritize the homeowner, the buyer, person who's going to live there. So the 203K, let's not gloss too much. I know you know what they are. I know what they are. But let's tell the audience, you said they'll use the after repair value and you can amortize that out. So how does that help you? What does that do for you using the after repair value?
The way that it works is you've got really 2 parts of the loan. You've got the purchase price and the rehab cost.
Yep.
And so it allows you to borrow a lot more because they're looking at the ARV, the after repaired value.
Sure.
And we will lend, and I it's been a while. I don't remember how much, or whether it's 100% or a little bit less than that. Maybe it's 96.5% because you have to put 3.5% down.
Yeah.
But they lend so much more because it's based on the after repaired value. So you get the purchase price plus all the rehab costs are included in that one loan. So a lot of times, having this pocket of money to pay contractors doesn't make sense for a new investor who is going to be waiting for reimbursement from the hard money lender, right? So if you're advancing $20,000, you have to have access to $20,000.
Right.
That's not the case with the 203K, where you put the down payment and then the contractor gets paid directly from the lender.
Yeah.
So that's a really, really important feature for the 203K. And also, it shouldn't go unnoticed, but the 203K loan doesn't require you to have experience. And that, I think, is a huge obstacle for a lot of newer investors where the hard money lenders are going to ask, how much money do you have in your bank account? Let me run your credit, and how many deals have you done?
Yeah.
What does your bio look like?
Yeah.
And this not only doesn't care what your bio looks like, but if you're doing the full version, like the big version, and there's a little one and a big one,
Okay.
You actually get a consultant who you are their client, and they're responsible for making sure that your deal goes well. So they're writing the scope of work for you. They're making sure that the work was done properly by the contractor. So in order for the contractor to get paid, they request the consultant to come out, and he evaluates for quality of workmanship. My consultant actually helped me with like design decisions, helpful with like lighting, material usage.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a back and forth between me wanting, all marble everywhere, and then kind of a balance between that and then what's functional versus, what's right in the middle. So my contractor, my consultant, and myself were having a really good dialogue.
That's awesome. So for a 203K, what is it? What are the stipulations? I mean, does it have to be your primary residence? Do you have to homestead that property? Okay.
Yeah, you have to. Yep. Owner occupant.
So it works well for house hacking, obviously, right? Is this the duplex that you bought? Is this?
Yep.
Okay.
That's the duplex, and you can actually do it. So you can do it up to 4 units. And what's really nice is you could then refinance it and then do it again. A lot of people think that it's an owner-occupied first-time homebuyer loan, but it's not. It's just an owner-occupied loan. So you could realistically do it in a 4-plex and then refinance, and then do it in a 3-plex, and then a duplex, and then a single family, right?
Right.
So it doesn't have to be a full remodel every single time. They've got the streamlined version. You can do a really light remodel, which would be amazing, right?
Yeah.
So every house needs a couple $1,000s of work.
Yeah.
It needs, painting at a minimum. You can refinish the floors, change your cabinets, right? You can do all that in the streamlined version. You can still build equity. So you'd be looking for a property that has good bones, good infrastructure, and maybe just needs cosmetic updates. Those are ones where you could still get a discount, but you're not going to get, pennies on the dollar for that property. But if you're an owner occupant, you're going to live in it, use it basically as a slow flip. And you can do it for 3.5% down multiple times. And the reason why I do it in the cascading waterfall is because you have to prove that you're going to live there. You've got to justify it. And it's harder to justify, I did a 203K with a single family, and now I'm going to buy a 4-family.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to move into a 4-family after you've been living in a single family. So, going down in units is a lot easier to justify.
Yeah, that's a great tip. That's a great strategy that people don't talk about very often. I never hear people talking about 203Ks, really, honestly. And I think that's very
a pain in the butt. It is, I should definitely make sure people know, like, it requires some administrative stamina to get through the paperwork.
Yeah.
And your contractor has to be really well selected as somebody who knows what they're getting into and is comfortable with the paperwork as well. Like my loan, the underwriting took 3 months because the scope of work just, kept getting nitpicked. And, so definitely look for lenders that are very familiar with the 203K, contractors that are the same, and then make sure that you've got, your wine fridge is readily stacked, because you are going to need it every night.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. But like you said, to your point, the alternative is having $20,000 available to you that you can go to a hard money lender that's maybe a little bit easier the paperwork isn't so strenuous, but now you need access to money, right? So I would say for 98% of the people out there, they don't have that access to $20,000, right? They're working a 9 to 5, they're making ends meet, but they don't have tons of money at the end of the day. So having to spend a little bit more aggravation time, but not having to have this huge access to capital is the majority of people, I think. So great strategy, but you're right. Go into it with your eyes wide open, knowing that it's going to be a huge pain in your butt, and you're going to need that, that wine refrigerator ready to rock for you. So now that you've been doing this for a while, I know you've had, a lot of success. What does your team look like, or who is working with you to help you build this business?
So I'm certainly still actively involved, but I do really make it a priority to automate and delegate as much as humanly possible. So the people that I work with closely, one, my right hand is a virtual assistant in the Philippines, Sherry. She works with me 20 hours a week. She's really responsible for all the administrative tasks, some social media posts, data scraping, a lot of stuff on the management of the portfolio and interfacing with tenants. And she handles all my maintenance requests and things like that. So she's been great. She's been really, really great. And then I have a leasing assistant who handles when a property comes up for lease. She's hand-selected by me based on her personality to go out and interface with prospective tenants, meet them, show them around. Because she's really the only person that I trust to represent my business the way that I would represent it. And I have a really high close rate when I meet people, meet prospective tenants, but I can't be out there regularly. So she is handpicked specifically because she's just so likable.
Now, how did when you say handpicked? How did you? What's the criteria? How did you pick her?
Man, I've known her for about a year. We actually do yoga together, and I just got to know her. She's wonderful. I started just kind of putting feelers out to find out what her interest is in real estate and what her availability is, what does her life look like. And she has an interest in learning more, doesn't know where to start, and I was like, well, why don't we do this? You show my properties, and she can't show them for anyone else. She just shows them for me. It's a side gig for her, but she's also learning how to screen, how to vet tenants, both on the phone with them, with their landlords, previous landlords, with their employers, collecting data. And then also she interfaces with the existing tenants to make sure that, that communication goes well. So she was selected because I knew her and also because I had gone and supervised a property manager who was doing leasing for me at the time. And I was so underwhelmed by the performance that I knew exactly what was missing. So, the actual skill of vetting a tenant or screening them can be learned, but being super personal and warm and welcoming is not something that you can learn. So I really chose her based on the way that she presents to the world and told her to go do it for me.
That's awesome. You mentioned Sherry in the Philippines. How did you find her? Because I will say this, I have hired VAs from all over, including the Philippines, and it's just never worked. I've just struggled. And I'm wondering, because you're having them handle maintenance requests and deal with the tenants that way. Where did you find her? Was it just trial and error, went through a bunch of people, or did you have a service help you, or how did you do that?
Yes is the answer. Yes. I've done
yes
both,
to everything.
Actually. Yes. I have had a bunch of virtual assistants and, from all over, and usually I find them through Upwork, and some have been with me for a long time. My bookkeeper, for example, has been with me for years. And I chose him based on our rapport, his profile. He has only real estate investor clients from the U.S. and Canada. So he was a natural fit, and he's just done a phenomenal job. But I vetted him with my accountant beforehand. I had him, reconcile my books and do 1 month and pass the books along to the accountant who approved. So he's been with me for a long time. But Sherry, doing the administrative work, I've gone through a lot of misfits for a while using Upwork. And I think what was happening for me is at the beginning, I was hiring somebody for just a very small piece of the pie of what I do. Yep. And so it wasn't a lot of interaction between us. And then occasionally I would need them. And for me, what I was finding is I wasn't doing a good enough job screening them at the beginning to make sure our expectations were the same. Yeah. So either, a few failures at the beginning. I had somebody who I really liked, and then the summer ended and they went back to school. So I had spent all summer training them, and then they left because they were going back to school. So I didn't do a good enough job of asking, how long do you want this to be for? Yeah. Where are you in life? That was a good learning one. And then, making sure that they have an internet connection that is available to them at their house rather than going to a cafe.
That's huge.
And how many hours a week do you want to work together, and on whose time frame? Are they set hours? Are they, do you need a 24-hour response time? Really, like, things that you wouldn't think to ask in, going to the local retailer and applying for a job. These are just not as, there's no cultural issues to deal with.
Yep.
Sherry has been my best success so far because I had gone through enough of like individual tasks, and I had trained so many different VAs on so many different tasks that I really had a great standard operating procedure for basically my entire business that has video instructions, links, templates. So it's plug and play, but certainly like all the resources that I use, I'm very tech heavy in my business, knowing what to update when is something that needs to be learned, but like the instructions are all there. So then I knew that I was ready for something more serious. And I went to a company called Core Assist, and they are a virtual staffing company. So they specifically seek out remote team members for your business. They provide you with 3 based on the conversation that you have about what your business model looks like, what you need, the skill sets that you're looking for. And I really loved their director of operations had a great strategy for me, and I'll share it with you, is I have a lot of like random tasks, and because it's just me in the business, I basically needed help with everything, right? With everything. And so they were like kind of the same thing with my leasing assistant. They're like, certain tasks can be learned and certain elements cannot. And so a lot of what I want to do is put more social media and be more present digitally. And so we sought out somebody that had a little bit of real estate experience before. She had worked with an investment company in California. So she knew the language and she knew the general process, but she's an artist. And so she's got really great skills and loves it when I give her a task that exhausts me, like, make this look good. I don't know how to do that, but she's like, oh yes, I'll see you tomorrow. I can't wait to get on it. So I really appreciated that, just that suggestion of find somebody with a skill set, like a natural skill set that you're looking for, and then you train the rest, especially because I had all of the, the foundation for bringing somebody in. And so besides that, like choosing the right person, I interviewed 3, I narrowed it down to 2, and then I had follow-up questions and, made the choice based on personality and of course, skill set. But then, we've been together now, I think 7 months, and the first 2 or 3, I was doing all the work. And that's not bad on her end. It's that's how much training goes into it, right? And it's not a set it and forget it thing. It takes a lot of time to nurture and to grow. And, it's not like someone's coming into your business and they're shadowing you for a week, right? That's just not realistic. So I would set aside, and I still set aside, about a half an hour every day or every other day to check in with her, to review whatever she's working on, to give her new tasks. We have a weekly call at the beginning of the week to look at what's coming up and, our objectives for the week. But it is still very time intensive. And for a long time, it's an expense. You're not getting anything out of it. It's just an expense. And I had a lot of question about that at the beginning. Maybe I need to pull out because I'm not sure, am I getting anything out of this? And then we hit a turning point where all of a sudden maintenance requests were coming in and being handled with grace. And I was like, so what happened? She's like, oh, well, this person called and I updated this, and then we got the pictures that it was all done, and here's the invoice. Oh my goodness.
Wow,
we are now in a good spot. So and I think that you really have to give them the time. You've got to set them up for success by making sure that you have the resources that they can review and look at. But then you need to give them the time to get comfortable, and also a safe place to ask questions, because their culture is not, they're not used to pushing back to asking questions. They're used to just doing it. And if they don't know how to do it, a lot of times they will just not do it. So that's what I was told. I haven't had that experience with Sherry at all, but it's been communicated to her. I would much rather you ask questions and do it right than don't ask questions and do it wrong. Yeah.
One thing I learned specifically with working with VAs from the Philippines was if you ask them if they understand, they will invariably say yes. Because at least that's my experience, because it's in their culture to not go, no, I don't understand. So they tend to like nod and if you ask a leading question and you're like, do you understand? You know, like they'll nod and you think they got it. You mentioned, so this is something I found interesting, and there's so much that I want to talk to you about that you're doing, but I don't want to stay too long on one topic, but as far as simple tasks, like I was always under the impression, well, first of all, I've always hired VAs, given them the task and tried to set it and forget it. And I've always failed, and that's probably why. But I've always thought when it came to specific areas of the world, and the VAs in the Philippines being one where you're better off giving them smaller, specific, singularly focused things than giving them a broad range of things that you want them to do, because it becomes confusing, or not confusing. That's not fair. You're not being specific enough, so they're not sure what you want them to do. But it sounds like you're having her do a couple. Just social media and talking to the tenants and dealing with that stuff. So you've got her doing some various things.
Yeah, but we didn't start there. So we started with just the simple task. The only thing that she had to do at the beginning was she had to find what the water bill was for the single family homes and add them to the monthly invoice. That was the task that she started with.
Okay.
And then from there, she started getting comfortable with one software that I use. And then we started saying, okay, here's how it relates to this software when we have an update. So now she's interfacing. So we did it really in stages.
Okay.
And that was something that I planned out ahead of time is, what do I want to expose her to first? Because you're right. If you give them too much, they can't, it's unfair to think that they can keep it all straight.
Right.
Just like I would have a hard time if it's like drinking from a fire hose, right?
Yeah,
it's just too much information at once.
Totally.
So give it in small chunks. And I always recommend to start with the thing that's the most repetitive and that's really causing the most brain damage. So what are you doing all the time in your business? Usually those things they're mindless.
Yeah.
So write the instructions down and just do that one piece. When you're sure that they've got that, then expand the tasks that you're giving them.
Yep, that makes sense. And obviously it sounds like you're self-managing your property. So, I mean, by self-managing, your team is doing it. So why self-manage versus just pay 10% or 8% or whatever, give it to a property management company, let them do everything?
Well, financially, it makes a lot more sense for me to self-manage at this point.
Okay.
I have very little turnover. So that's great. And, and I think the reason why I have such little turnover is because of the interaction that I have with my tenants. So, Sherry has a lot of one-on-one when they're first moving in.
Yep.
But after that, like all these check-ins and these friendly correspondences that I have, these back and forth, these are just emails that I set up, an email sequence that I set up. And they're getting them, they don't know that they're automated because they come from our Sunrise email address. And I get responses back like, oh, so good to hear from you. And I'll send, the before they move in, the day they move in, the day after they move in. I think it's 2 weeks later, 6 months later. And then right before they move out, like 60 days before they move out, they'll get another set of emails about, hey, what are you doing going forward? So all of that management is automated. I'm not sure that any property manager makes as many touches as I do. And that's not any of my time. And I'm paying Sherry to manage, and Sherry's a lot cheaper than 10% of every property that I own.
Yeah,
so
it's a great point.
And she's doing my maintenance requests for me.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure I'm not doing that much to farm off.
That's a good point, really, because I have I have property management company handling all my rentals, and I have about 20 rentals. So it's similar portfolio. I can't say for sure because I'm not in their system, but I would be willing to bet a lot of money they're not sending emails periodically to check in and touch points like that. We tend to hear from the tenants when they don't pay or when they want to move out, right? That's just how it operates, right? But I think that's great. So so I'm going to ask you more of a probing question. I'm going to get real reportery on you here because I have had property management companies. The biggest problem that I have with property management companies, and you're self-managing, I get it, but you're relying on a VA to an extent to handle the repairs. Okay, I've had property management companies in the past, and it seems like, and again, the VA isn't a real estate investor who's like done a ton of flips, right? So you can't expect her to have that experience. So how do you avoid, I have a hard time framing this question. How do you avoid overpaying for repairs because you're having someone do it who doesn't have a depth of knowledge, I'm assuming, in dealing with contractors and knowing what it costs in America to actually like snake a drain or repair a furnace? Like the management companies I had, US based, still overpay because they just call someone and whatever they quote, that's what they pass along to me. It doesn't matter to them, right? Mm-hmm. So how do you get the prices you want?
Yeah, so all of the rentals that I've bought, they've all been remodels. Like I said, I do flips. Okay. So I have a pool of contractors that are in my Rolodex. And these are the people, and there's one contractor in particular who's my go-to. He's general handyman, general contractor, carpenter. So he is always the first call. And I have worked with him for years. I trust him. I can give him pushback when I think he's being ridiculous, and he does the same for me. This is a two-way street. Okay. And he's always our go-to, and then we have a go-to in every area. So plumbing and HVAC, electrical. Okay. And then I will say we just encountered a new one. So this was an appliance repair. And she called 3 different appliance repair people and said, I don't feel comfortable that we've got the best price yet. I'm calling more.
Oh, so, I love her. I love Sherry. That's awesome. That makes me love Sherry.
Last name to myself.
Yeah, you better, because I'm going to call her after this interview. No, that's great. Honestly, that right there, what you just said, would speak volumes to me about this person, because that's the thing that's rare, is getting someone in your company. Listen, it would be a lot easier for her just to pick someone who quoted it and go, here it is, right? It's your stable of people. Here you go.
Yeah, I got what you
want. But to have that consciousness about them to say, I feel like we can do better. I'm going to keep working on this. Like, whoa, I'm going to look for Sherry on Upwork now. I'm just kidding. That's awesome. Yeah, that's really great.
And I think that she came naturally just curious and driven to always like find the best thing. Same thing, like I have some furnished rentals, and so when the cleaner comes in, she's responsible for telling me like what inventory of products that we need to replenish. And so Sherry goes to Amazon and searches to make sure that we've got like the lowest cost per item. And I mean, she's just a naturally tight person. I guess. That's just great. A good fit. I don't know how.
It's a really good fit. No, that's a perfect fit. Sherry's awesome. So you mentioned short-term rentals, and I know you're into that too. I got to tell you, I've interviewed a bunch of people who do short-term rentals, and some people who do them exclusively, and it's the thing that I keep coming back to that I really, really, really want to do and investigate. I just feel like I've never prioritized it, but I love the concept. How did you get into the short-term rental side of it? Why did you get into it? And then just as a side note, I'm wondering how COVID has affected that for you.
So my short-term rentals, they're actually mid-term rentals, to be fair. They're to traveling nurses. So COVID it's affected, well, one, because we're very careful about the procedures of these nurses that come in. So I actually live in the nurses are upstairs and I'm downstairs. So I'm very careful about, making sure that there's sanitizing wipes and things like that. But the market of nurses is very different, where our demand has increased versus, short-term vacation rentals. It's really come to a halt. So I like the traveling nurses because they're 3-month increments. And so you're not doing the constant turnover. Yeah. That to me would be exhausting. And, I don't think that I would be up for that. But 3-month turnover is great. Like last weekend, we had somebody move out. The next day, somebody moved in. So I'm not seeing a lot of vacancy. The price per room is significantly higher. So I think it's great. And especially if you don't have the vacancy. Yeah. One thing that's tougher is that you have very little notice. So like I'm used to 60 days notice or 45 days notice if a tenant's going to move out. Yeah. With the traveling nurses, you have 2 weeks. Basically, really? It's like when people start to recognize I'm coming to the area and but so that I haven't gotten used to that yet, and it gives me a little of anxiety every time I know somebody's leaving and it's just still too soon to know who's next.
Yeah.
But it's a great business model. I really like it. We meet a ton of new people. I've got 2 rooms in this house and then another an apartment that I do the same thing. And so that one is a little different. It's 2 bedrooms, but
that's cool. That's a unique twist on it.
Great occupancy. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I when you said short term, I just assumed Airbnb. Like I assume that's what you're talking about. So that's cool. That's a cool little niche way to go. Plus, I would think with nurses, I mean, I would think the wear and tear and the abuse of the place is probably not existent because they're working all the time.
Yeah. And they're like contributing members of society.
Yeah.
They're, and also it's like 1 person per room. It's not partiers that you're going to get in an Airbnb or a vacation rental at the beach or something like that. It's so quiet, quiet.
Yeah.
But you asked me how I got into it actually. So I bought this beautiful Victorian property in a historic downtown, and the renovation went way over budget, and so I wasn't going to be able to sell it the way I thought I was going to. So I decided to hold it, and of course the numbers didn't make sense because it was a higher level property. If I was just doing regular unfurnished annual rental,
right?
And it just made a ton of sense. The layout worked to have totally separate units, and I was able to put them in, and now the tenant rent covers the mortgage, and everyone lives perfectly happy, and we don't really see them. It's nice. Really like they're great, but
and you're living
that
for
was
free.
Just one of the. I'm living for free in a beautiful house in a beautiful town, and again, just resourceful and figuring out a way to make it work.
I love it. That's so cool. And I know you use, and in my notes here, I'm looking at you use private money and hard money to do your deals. Are you I should ask, so you might have said something earlier that I might not have heard you. Do you just do rentals, short, long-term rentals, or are you also flipping actively?
I am also flipping.
Okay.
I do maybe 2 flips a year. It's definitely not my primary business. I prefer rentals. But all of them have the same initial structure, really, because even my rentals, they're BRRRRs, right? The buy, renovate, rent, refinance, repeat model.
Yep.
So equity recapture. So in all of those, I'm doing some form of a bridge loan, and usually that's a combination of hard money and private money.
Okay.
Sometimes it's all private, but that's very rare.
How do you raise private money? I know that sometimes that's a little bit of a holy grail for people, and a kind of a mystery how you raise money. How did you go about it? Was it just people you knew had tons of money, or did you have to go out and get real creative about that? No, I've been really, really lucky, honestly. I guess because I talk about real estate a lot, and my first lender was my brother, to be fair. Well, hard money lender, and then my brother was my first private lender. Okay.
So, I had to pitch myself to the hard money lender. He turned me down the first time, and then I went and did the 203K. Then when I came back, he's like, okay, we're ready to go. So the hard money lender, I had to actually go through the interview process. I was okay. But the private money has been through people. It started with my brother, and then I had a track record behind me of deals that have been successful, and he's actually had money with me for about 5 years now, and just recycled through different projects.
Okay.
And a combination of his own personal funds and then his retirement accounts. And then when I would talk to people, and I've never asked anyone for money, actually. It's always been, hey, I see what you're doing. I know that you're experienced here. Let me know when you need some funds. And it's usually kind of just come up at the right time. Hey, I do have a project. If you're interested, yeah, great.
Yeah.
So I don't have any great advice except for just put yourself out there and make sure people know what you're doing and that you're involved.
To me, that is the number one advice. I've been raising private money since 2008, and that is the number one advice is talk about what you're doing. Put yourself out there. That's how I raised all the money I have. I've not asked for money either. And I heard somebody told me a long time ago, something that stuck with me. They said, if you ask for money, you're going to get advice. And if you ask for advice, you're going to get money. So a lot of times I just tell people, listen, if you know someone who has maybe the money and you wonder if they would be interested, I go to them and ask for advice. Say, listen, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to start raising money. This is how I plan on pitching it. I value you. I know that you have a lot of experience. What do you think of this? How should I change my approach, or what am I doing wrong, and what can you help me with? And a lot of times they'll go, well, I'd be interested. Like, what are you doing? Tell me more about it. So, but I love that. And it's funny, sometimes people who are good at things don't even realize how, what they're doing, how invaluable it is to everybody else. Like you saying, I didn't really do anything. I just told everybody what I was up to. Like, that's what I tell people. If you say, give me one piece of advice for raising money, I just say, tell everyone like document what you're doing on Facebook or whatever. Like you don't have to ask for money, just document, and people will see it and want to get involved. Yeah. So I think that's awesome. It's super awesome. That's the best advice in the world. Yeah. And you called it getting lucky. It's definitely not getting lucky. I think you did exactly what you needed to do, just intuitively. Like that's exactly what you should do in my opinion. So let's talk a little bit about you touched on that you're very tech driven. How do you run your business? Like at a high level, how does this whole machine operate, and what kind of tools do you use that help you in your day?
Yeah. So my central hub is Podio. Are you familiar with Podio?
Very familiar. I used it for many years.
Yeah, I love Podio. So Podio is really my central hub, and it's kind of the thing that we look at all the time to find out what's going on. Mm-hmm. And then we have an online rent collection software, payyourrent.com. And we really heavily rely on like Google Drive. So my standard operating procedures are all built in Google Drive. Mm-hmm. And then we also store all of our templates in Google Drive, the video resources. Like I'll do a screen capture of me performing a task, and I'll speak it out loud. So to capture that, I'll use Soapbox. It's a free Google Chrome extension.
What's it called?
It stores all the video. Soapbox.
Okay.
SOAPBOX. It's totally free, and it just captures what you're doing, and then it stores it for you. It just gives you a link. So in my SOP, I just have a link to whatever the video is. And then for templates, I use the Microsoft Word developer tab so that you can enter fields and not change the formatting and just tab through. What else do I use?
Microsoft developer tab, you said?
It's Microsoft Office, but the developer tab allows you to enter like the fields or drop-down menus so you can choose like washing machine is included or is not included, right? Yeah. And so you don't have to go in or like put the tenant's name, and it carries forward through the entire document.
Gotcha.
So that's really helpful.
Yeah, that's cool.
So speaking of DocuSign and like electronic signatures are huge.
Yep.
What else? I'm sure Sherry knows all of them off the top of her head. But
what do you use? You're a realtor, you said, right? So what do you use for valuations? You're on the MLS and stuff. Are she helping you with that kind of stuff too, Sherry, like valuing properties and things?
Not really. I mean, so she helps me with transaction management, so uploading documents and making sure that that's all current. But valuation, I'm not there with her yet. I don't know that I will get there with her either.
Okay.
I think that it's so hyper-specific and local that I would probably be, if that's something that I need to do regularly and don't want to be the one doing it myself, I think that's like one of the last things that I would hand off as the valuation. But, I'd probably be using a local realtor to do that.
Okay. So how are you finding deals? What is the deal flow? And you don't have to give us any special sauce. Please give it to us. But how do you find your deals? What does the process look like for you?
No one thing. I mean, it was the MLS when I first got started. Then it was HUD Homes, and now it was auctions a little while ago. The past few have been through a wholesaling agent, or wholesaler, and then actually the very last one I bought was back on the MLS. And I just happened to see it, get into it the very first day it was on, and offered a 10-day close. And so, my offer wasn't the strongest, but it was the timeliest with no contingencies. So
right.
Yeah, that was an on-market deal.
So is it fair to say you're not spending tons and tons of money on marketing?
I have not spent tons and tons of money on marketing. I've tried direct mail. I don't get I don't get leads from it, whether that's my own message or whether it's the list that I'm choosing.
Okay.
I have a good open rate. I get a bunch of people that let me know that they don't want to be on my list anymore, but not really a great
So it's being delivered. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, and it's handwritten, so I know that people are opening it, but it's not delivering the message. But I did just start Facebook ads with digital follow-ups and automated follow-ups. So this is something that I just launched last week.
Cool.
So I'm starting to spend a lot more, and that funnel looks a lot like, Facebook ads, and then, making sure that we get on a call and then closing the deal that way.
Okay, cool.
Hopefully.
So the person who shows houses for you is local, obviously. Everybody else, is Sherry the only other person on your team? Is that you three, or is there other people?
Nope. So I've got a letter addresser.
Okay.
So I've got one other person who's local, who's actually receiving the letters from the printer, and she's just hand addressing all the envelopes.
Wow.
And
When you said
them,
handwritten, you meant it. Handwritten by someone, not handwriting font or handwriting machine, like a handwriting person.
Yeah, but it's just the envelopes.
Okay.
The actual letter is printed, my signature is printed, but the envelopes are actually handwritten by someone local, and then she puts them in the mail.
Okay.
And then I have a Podio developer who is like my go-to person when I want to add a feature or can't figure out why this isn't working. Because tech is amazing until it breaks or there's an update. And I'm tech heavy, but not tech savvy. So I definitely need,
Is this person,
help me with that.
This Podio developer, Upwork? Is that where you found that person too?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he's on Upwork.
Okay.
So I love Upwork because of the transparency and billing and, real easy to communicate. I think that's great. But
totally. Okay. So the developer, the handwriter, Sherry, and your person who shows houses. Is that your team?
And my bookkeeper.
And your bookkeeper, right? Okay. Who also you found on Upwork?
Yep.
Okay. Wow. This is quite an endorsement for Upwork. I use them all the time too, actually. I think they're great as well. I haven't had great success with like a VA who works ongoing, but I definitely hire people for tasks all the time on Upwork and Fiverr for that matter. I use Fiverr for certain small things too. Yeah, that's cool. So having those standard operating procedures, like you said, the sort of plug and play procedures that if Sherry were not to work out, you at least have this framework, and anybody who doesn't work out, right? You have this framework. And I talk to people a lot about scaling their business. That's one of the things that I'm really passionate about. And not because everyone wants to be huge, but even if you're going to stay smallish, scaling to that point, but doing it so you're not spending all of your time running around doing everything. Like that's the worst. Yeah. We all do this not to have a job or to work 80 hours a week. Like we do it to have a little bit of time freedom too. So I think being tech heavy is good. And the fact that you're not tech savvy is probably not bad, because if you were, you'd be tempted to be in there fiddling with the gears, right? Like trying to do all these things. And I say the same things to house flippers. You're better off as a house flipper not knowing how to repair or build anything, because it'll take away the temptation to go do all the work, which means you're not building your business. You're not raising money. You're not finding deals. You're in there swinging hammers. That's no good. So I always tell people, like, I know what things cost and I know how long they should take. Those are the two things you need to know as a house flipper. Knowing how to do it is not necessarily critical, as long as you know what it should cost, how long it should take, and you have a general understanding of the process. So yeah, that's huge. Any advice for people right now? I mean, we're going through this pandemic. I don't know how it's affecting your business. Doesn't sound like it's affecting it too negatively.
No, I'm at 100% rent collection for April, May, and June
so far.
Awesome. So yeah, I'm pretty good. Except for I've got one squatter living in a house I'm supposed to flip, and I can't get him out because I can't evict him. So I guess maybe not 100% in all the rentals.
Intended rentals are 100%.
Yeah,
the unintended rental is not going so well. Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah. It is a weird thing. I understand. We're in the same situation. We can't evict right now either. And I've had the same thing. I actually did a flip where I finished the flip, and the morning I went to go look at the final product, that person had come in, changed the locks, and started squatting. And I had to evict them. And it took at the time, it took 60 days. And then how do you think the renovation looked after 60 days of them squatting in my house? So I had I had to redo a lot. I had to repaint and repair damages. It was awful. Because I got there and I'm like, hey, the key doesn't work that you gave me. And he goes, no, I was just there last night. It works. And I said, just out of curiosity, this doesn't look like the doorknob you normally put on. Normally we put brushed nickel. This was like gold or something. He's like, I didn't put a gold doorknob on your door. I'm like, well, wait a minute. This isn't the doorknob you put on? He goes, dude, somebody is squatting in that house. Sure enough, I looked in and they weren't in there, but I could tell somebody had moved in. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. So
who was it? Was it a sub? Somebody had to have access to the house.
It was somebody who just lived in or around, or kind of was from that area, and I think they were casing the house. They knew we were flipping it, but my guy was there every single day, and I think they saw when he was done and just said, this is a great place for us to live for a while. Funny, you were ex-lawyer. I talked to a lawyer, and now I'm in Michigan. It was a Detroit lawyer, and I said, what do I do here? And he goes, well, by law, you have to evict them. I'm like, I didn't tenant them. Like, they're not a tenant. Why do I have to evict them? I was newer. And he's like, that's just the law. He said, he goes, I know people who will go over there and persuade him to leave. We can go that route too. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. I don't even know what that means, but I think I want to steer clear of that. Let's just go ahead and do this legally. But yeah, so we had to evict him. It was ridiculous. And they knew when they had to be out. Like, they didn't show up, obviously, to the court hearing. And they knew it. And they just left. And I was talking to folks who...
But they made you...
Yeah, I had to redo stuff. They made you
delay.
Yeah, totally delayed it. And it was summertime when they moved in, so I missed the whole summer. So it really sucked. But it's funny. It turns out there are people, probably in all cities, who just go from house to house and they get evicted. They wait 60 days, and then on the 59th day, they move out into another house. And then they get another 60 days or however long in that house. And they just keep moving house to house that's vacant.
And my situation isn't like that. I don't have somebody who is intentionally usury. I think I've got somebody with mental health problems. He did intend to leave. We had a cash for keys arrangement, and then COVID hit, and he was going to go to a shelter or some sort of public facility, and they stopped accepting people because everything went into quarantine, and he had no place to go. And no friends will accept him because he has mental health issues and keeps the house in total disorder. But I explored. I've sent cops to the house to see if he's okay because he, was responsive and then wasn't. Turns out he's fine. But then,
thank goodness.
Explored. Yeah, I explored with my lawyer. I'm like, can I condemn the house? I've never considered condemning my own house, but if it's condemned, he has to go somewhere else, right? Yeah. And they're like, yeah, but then you have to repair it for him and he can come back. So, I've explored everything, and basically I'm just waiting him out.
Certain parts of the legal system just don't seem quite right to me. It's crazy. Recently I had a tenant that she stopped paying, wouldn't respond to me. And when we then she wouldn't answer calls or anything, mail, nothing. Finally got a hold of a family member. They said, we just moved her into the hospital. She's dying. And I'm like, what? I'm like, I don't know what to do. Like, I don't want to, what am I going to do? Like, evict someone who's dying? Like, so I said, okay, just keep in touch right now. And then I don't know. Then they stopped responding. And finally we had to get into the house. Like, we just had to go in, get the police and everything going. Turned out she just died at some point, and the family didn't bother telling me. And I was trying to be respectful and conscious of somebody's mother passing away, and she was like in the middle of and I was just like, I don't know what to do here. It's horrible. Like, I don't know what to do. And we finally got the house, and wow. This was a 2-bedroom, 600 square foot, no basement, no garage, and it cost more than most bigger houses. It was like a family of bears had lived there for 10 years. It was absolutely disaster. So anyways, it's just weird.
If she had lived, you might have actually been better off, because I acquired a property that had a hoarder in it, and I looked through and I was like, oh my God, how am I ever gonna work through all this? I was like, I'll give you $500 if you'll be out by the 31st. And she's like, there's no way. And I was like, okay, the other option is we evict, but I'd much rather give you the money. The 31st, she sends me an email and a picture. She's out, and everything. The place was spotless.
Wow.
I was shocked. Yeah, shocked, but pleasantly surprised.
Yeah,
that was a good scenario.
Bought a few hoarder houses, and it's always funny because their thing is like, it's going to take me months to go through all my stuff, and we're like, listen, take what you want, and we will just give you a few $1,000s for everything else. Like, just, and it's always like, nope, everything here is too valuable. It's just funny when you're dealing with that. Anyways, this is weird. Now it's turned into like therapy session for us, but the whole squatting thing has just brought up bad memories of that house where they squatted in my finished renovation. But Yeah. Wow. We got way off track here,
Stories.
Horror stories, right? But that's good. I mean, I think sometimes it's helpful for people to hear these stories because it's like, it doesn't always go perfectly, but honestly, the strategy that you're using, that you're focusing on mostly, is the rental, the the BRRRR strategy, basically. Yeah. It's super doable. And when you start the way you started with the 203K, you eliminate the excuse of, well, I don't have any money, right? Like, you don't need much money, a couple percent or whatever of the house that you're buying. And depending on what market you're in Michigan, I mean, we're buying houses for $30,000 to $50,000. Like, 2-3% of that is nothing. So where are you located again? I forget where you're working on.
Connecticut, central Connecticut. Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, we have a higher barrier to entry, certainly, but still, I mean, it's not like New York, New Jersey,
right?
Some of the first tier markets.
Exactly. And I think that strategy, right, that the rental portfolio, building that long term, and I like that you're doing flips here and there. I assume just for like an influx of cash, and exactly. You always can take those down if you want as well. You can find a property, and I like that you're not spending tons of money on marketing, because I know so many people that go out there and they're like, well, I don't know where to get leads, so I'm just going to throw out a ton of direct mail and PPC, and like next thing you know, they got tens of thousands of dollars going out in marketing, and they have to get 2 or 3 or 4 deals, or they're in real trouble, right? So
at a loss.
Yeah, at a loss. And building it the way you're building it, super smart. And I know that you're just continuing to evolve and grow and get better. So I just was happy to have you on. I know we're kind of running longer than I meant to, but it was just great conversation. You're fun to talk to, obviously, and you know a lot of stuff. So I think it's been real helpful for people to see not only how you start your business, how you're running it, how you're automating it, and how you're using VAs, because let's face it, VAs are less expensive than hiring local people. So that's the nut that I think a lot of people try to crack, and they get concerned, or they do it once poorly and they just go, VAs don't work. I've even said that before. Like, I've tried it a few times, it didn't work. I'm like, But honestly, if you can do it right, start small, like you said, let them watch what you're doing. Like, you're going to do a lot of the work. It's an investment for a while. But if you can get them proficient at one thing at a time and kind of keep adding on, pretty soon you have this person who you would have paid a lot more in the United States doing a great job for you, and you're paying a lot less. So smart. Good stuff. Awesome.
Thanks.
Well, listen, I'm going to let you go. I could talk to you all day, honestly. I said that before we went live here, that I could talk about real estate with people like you literally for hours, but I won't do that to you. So thank you for doing this, Stephanie. I really appreciate you taking the time and being so transparent with everything, and just letting us know how you run your business, because I think that's the real problem. I mean, this show is all about getting started, and all the reasons not to get started, I think we've attacked most of them here today, right? Like, money, how do you find leads? Like, I don't know how to get people to do things that I need done that I can't do. Like, all of these things you've talked about, and there's really very little excuses after listening to this podcast. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much. And like I said, actually, before we started live here, I think the concept of just start is so important, right? You don't have to be super knowledgeable. You have to be action oriented. So just get in one step at a time. Again, one bite of the elephant at a time. Absolutely.
Well, thank you again. I appreciate you doing this. Have a fantastic rest of your day. Have a great summer.
Thank you.
And continued success to you. You deserve it. You seem like a really, really great person.
Thank you so much. This was a blast, Mike. Talk to you soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed that interview. Stephanie's awesome, very smart, and like I was saying in the intro, just really actionable. Like, things she's doing seem doable, right? Not easy, and that's not diminishing what she said. She's building a fantastically efficient, smart business, cost-effective, like all the things that you think about when you want to start this business. Like, how do I do it? And how is it doable? And when you hear how she's putting this together, starting with the 203K loan and going right into the BRRRR method, using VAs to help round out her team, like this, you can get your arms around that concept, right? As a newer or smaller investor, you can get your arms around that and go, yeah, I can do that. That makes sense to me. So she is doing some cool stuff, and I loved having her on. So I hope you enjoyed that. Also, I want to mention to you, if you want to hang out with me this year before the end of the year, you have an opportunity to do that. I'm going to be in Orlando on October 15th through the 17th at Flip Hacking Live. It's the only public event that I go to all year. I'll be speaking there. there. I'll be around for the whole 3 days. You can grab me and pull me aside and we can chat about your business or just talk in general. It's fine. I'd love to meet you guys, especially those of you that are listening to this podcast. It's just very cool to get to meet you in person. So if you would like to do that, if that's something you're interested in, I will be there in Orlando from the October 15th through the 17th at Flip Hacking Live. And if you want to know how you can find out more or get tickets, go to juststartrealestate.com/Flip Hacking Live, and it'll take you right to that page and you can check it out and get your tickets, and I would love to see you there. So if you want to do that, go check it out. Otherwise, guys, get out there and just start. Make today the best day. Talk to you next time. Okay, you're still there. You're still listening. That's awesome. And I really appreciate that. Now, hopefully it wasn't an accident. Hopefully you didn't leave the room and I'm just talking to an empty room right now. But assuming you're still there, I want to do something really, really cool for you. For a limited time, I want to give you a free digital download of my book, the entire book, Level Jumping. If you're a listener to the show, you know it just came out and it really details how I took my business from being like one where I was just doing a few deals a month, maybe 1 or 2 deals a month, to doing over 10 and sometimes 15 deals a month and over 100 a year. And I went from doing very little profit to over $1 million in profit. And I made that transformation in a 12-month period. And this book talks about what I did, the steps I took to transform my business and how you can too. So grab a free digital download and you can get that by texting the words "just start," as 2 words now, "just start" to the number 55444. So text "just start" to 55444. I will send you a free digital download of my book. It's the complete book. There's nothing held back, and that'll be completely yours just for making it to the end of the show and listening to me. And I really, really appreciate it, guys. So I want to do something nice for you. I do this every once in a while at the end of shows, and if you listen to the very end, every once in a while, I do a giveaway like this. So hopefully you enjoy that. Go grab a free copy. I hope you read it. I hope you love it. Reach out. Let me know what you think. All right, guys. Talk to you next time.